Hey everyone, how's it going? Coming to y'all with another video. This one is on a knife comparison. Growing up, watching YouTube, I used to love whenever a YouTuber would pit two different knives against each other and told everyone what the specs were, how they performed side by side, and which one was the better bang for the buck. And I don't see a lot of that anymore, and I thought, well, if I like that kind of content, I should make that kind of content, because maybe there's someone else out there who's curious about which is the better choice for the money. And as a result, I have two knives here in front of me. I'm going to do this with several more knives if you guys continue to enjoy it. I'll probably record about 3 or 4 today, schedule them for upload, and then see how they do. But this is the Enlan EL-06, this one branded B, which Enlan will do. Honestly, they're known to label some knives as B, some knives as Enlan or Enlan, or however it's supposed to be pronounced. And they'll even sell to different companies to have their own brands put on it, but at their core, Enlan is the company who makes them. But this is the EL-06 versus the Sanrenmu Land series Model 911. Now this also kind of counts for the 910, because the 910 is the exact same knife, just with a black G10 handle with a bit of a finer G10 pattern. So this really could count for both the 910 as well as the 911, and hell, even the 912, because that's the stainless steel frame lock version, which is essentially a variant. Just as the EL-06 could also include the EL-02, because it's the exact same design, just using an axis lock. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they're pretty much they're all going to count together as the same knives, and that will come up later whenever I talk about the variations you have available. So, let's start by looking at the Sanrenmu. We have a 12C27 blade that is 3.4 inches long. We have a nice high flat grind. This one has a satin finish, though you can get these in, depending on the handle you go with, you can get them in either a black stone wash or a standard stone wash. And at one point in time, there was even a titanium handled version. I can't remember what kind of blade that came with, though. But again, we're looking 3.4 inches long, flat grind, 12C27 steel. What about with the Enlan EL-06? Well, we have a 3.5-inch blade made out of 9CR18 MOV steel with a nice hollow grind. In terms of overall edge holding between these two knives, I've tested them side by side just for the purpose of doing a video like this, and I found that the Enlan held an edge just slightly better than the Sanrenmu. Now, I was doing a lot of cardboard cutting specifically, and cardboard will dull pretty much anything. You do enough cardboard cutting with any super steel, and it's going to dull the same as anything else. It'll hold a little while longer, but it will dull. The purpose wasn't to see if they would still be hair-popping razor sharp after the cutting test. I knew that they weren't going to be. It's not realistic to expect them to be. It's which one held its edge a bit better in the long run, and to that, I have to give it to the Enlan. The 9CR18 MOV is somewhere in between 440B and 440C. It's very commonly called Chinese 440C, and that's not really accurate. If you look at it on a comparison chart, you go to Z Knives and you pull up the composition of the steel, it's actually closer to 440B, which is to say that it's a step above AUS 8. 440B is slightly better than AUS 8, than HCR13 MOV, and so on and so forth. But it's a bit better than 440B, but still below 440C. That said, that does leave it with better edge holding as compared to Sandvik 12C27 on average. I've used a lot of 12C27 from Frost Mora, or from Mora of Sweden rather. I've used quite a bit of their 12C27, and now I've obviously gotten quite a bit of use out of this 12C27. And I found that this holds an edge slightly better than a middle-of-the-road AUS 8 or HCR13, but if you get a nicer AUS 8 or HCR, they'll probably outperform it by a little bit in terms of overall edge holding. This is a great steel, and I do love it for what it is, but in terms of overall edge holding, I have to give it to the Enlan. Now that said, in terms of ease of sharpening, while 9CR18 is very easy to sharpen, 12C27 is a dream to sharpen. This steel takes a very fine edge, and it takes it very, very easily. I didn't have to do very much to this at all. I may have spent 30 seconds, 45 seconds touching this up, and it came right back to hair-popping razor sharp. Whereas the 9CR18 MOV blade on the Enlan probably took me about a minute and a half to get back to where I liked it to be, which is still a pretty quick sharpening process. But it did take a bit longer to sharpen, so I'm going to say in terms of ease of sharpening, as well as how fine the edge you can get, because this does take a finer edge than this, I'm going to go ahead and give that to the Sanrenmu Land. How do they perform in terms of slicing side by side? Well, the Land cut like a dream. Okay, it's a nice thin blade, relatively anyways. And that high flat grind, as well as the satin finish, ensure that it zipped through the cardboard. With the Enlan, there's a combination of factors that may have resulted in it not performing quite as well. Some will say hollow grinds just aren't as good of a slicing blade. I've had a lot of hollow ground blades that sliced phenomenally. So I don't think that's the reason why. I think the reason this didn't slice as well is A, we have that titanium nitride coated blade, which does create some drag. And B, this is a relatively thicker bladed knife, especially by comparison. So if I can bring these both in here, you can see how much thicker the blade stock is on that Enlan. So that's probably, those two things together are probably going to be the reason why it didn't slice quite as well. If you do get the black G10 handled version with a stone-washed blade, it may slice a bit better, but I still think the Land will slice better because it is a thinner stock. So in terms of which one's the better slicer, I'm going to give that to the Sanrenmu. Alright, what about deployment speed and lockup? Well, the Enlan deploys via a single thumb stud only on the right-hand side. You can see it is nicely textured. So it's very easy to get a grip on it, and it comes out pretty quick. In terms of lockup, solid. There's no play in any direction, and we do use a liner lock. Now, I have a full review on this knife coming out that'll mention this, but this liner lock sticks a little bit and is pretty sharp, so it can be somewhat uncomfortable to disengage. In the pivot point, this knife is riding on, I believe it's Teflon washers. Let me bring it off camera to have a close look. Phosphor bronze washers, actually, as I kind of look into that a little bit more. The Sanrenmu deploys readily, locks up super solid, and it is also a liner lock, but this liner lock is very comfortable to disengage and very easy to actuate. Thumb studs, you can see these are dual thumb studs, and they provide very good grip. And it rides on a ball bearing system, which results in this knife being like extremely, extremely smooth when compared. Yeah, so I'm going to say deployment and lockup. While they both lock up tight and come out fast, this comes out a bit faster and smoother, and the lock is a bit nicer to disengage. I'm going to give that to the Sanrenmu as well. Handles. On the Enlan, we have a 4.7-inch handle made out of G10. On the Sanrenmu, we have a 4.5-inch handle made out of G10. Now that's on these particular versions. This does come in black G10 and camo G10 and the EL-02, the smooth G10, a textured G10, and I believe a wood-handled version. Whereas with this, you get either green G10 or black G10 or a stainless steel-handled version, and at one point in time, now discontinued, a titanium frame lock version. But the versions I have in front of me, they're both G10, and the Land has significantly better traction. The coating on this G10 has smoothed it out so much it doesn't really provide any grip, whereas this is extremely grippy. In terms of ergonomics and comfort when holding the knife, the Enlan is very comfortable without really any hot spots. A slight dig on that clip, but nothing too bad, whereas the Sanrenmu is extremely ergonomic, and I do mean extremely ergonomic. In terms of jimping topside, we have a small run of it on the Enlan, but it is very functional, versus a larger run on the Sanrenmu, which is equally functional. So in the ergonomics department, the handle and everything else, I'm going to have to give that also to the Land. It just seems to be a bit better in many categories, this one included. It's a little bit more comfy in hand, has the better G10, has the better traction on it, has slightly better jimping just because there's a longer run of it as compared to this Enlan, which a good portion of the Enlan's jimping is recessed into that handle. I have to give the ergonomics department to the Sanrenmu. What about the pocket clip? I actually forgot to grab my little test pocket, so give me just 1 second as I reach over and grab it. Let's go ahead and close these both up and examine the clip. First of all, with the Sanrenmu, you can see it is reversible to left and right hand side, making this knife fully ambidextrous. With the Enlan, it is only situated on the right-hand side. Both knives only allow for tip-up carry, which is most people's preferred carry method anyways. Sliding these knives into the test pocket, we can see how they will ride compared to one another. Neither are deep carry clips, but the Sanrenmu does carry a decent bit deeper than the Enlan. I personally find both to carry perfectly fine. I don't mind having knives sticking out of the pocket a little bit. I like something to grab onto and extract from, so I find these to both be very acceptable. However, you might say that, the more knife is hidden, the better, and prefer the Sanrenmu in that category. For me, I'm still going to give the Sanrenmu the win in this category simply because it's reversible to either side, though I do like that the Enlan is anchored with 3 screws as opposed to 1. This shouldn't loosen quite as quickly as this will. Neither have loosened in my own testing, but if I had to suspect, I'm going to say that maybe the Sanrenmu will loosen faster, but the fact that it's ambidextrous still allows it to win this particular point. So in pretty much every way so far, you're noticing the Sanrenmu is beating the Enlan, and it's an interesting case because this is still a good knife. The Enlan is still a very good knife for the money. I mean, you're getting quite a lot for very little. We're talking $18 for the EL-06 versus $23 for the Sanrenmu. So the Sanrenmu is more expensive, but not by a lot. In my experience, if you have 18 bucks to spend on a knife, you probably have 23, and if not, you can probably end up getting the additional cash. Even if you're a kid on an allowance budget, you mow someone's yard, or you do some extra housework for your parents, earn a little extra allowance. Maybe extort the extra allowance out of one of your siblings. Not saying you should do that, but just saying it does happen. It's usually pretty easy to get that additional cash. In terms of weight, we're looking at 4.7 ounces for the Sanrenmu, as well as 4.7 ounces for the Enlan. They are both the same weight, which is the main reason why, despite the Enlan being larger, the Sanrenmu has full stainless steel liners, albeit they are skeletonized, but they are still full stainless steel liners, whereas with the Enlan, we have, as you can see, kind of like recessed stainless steel liners. And these are not milled out. It would save quite a bit of weight if they had milled these out, but as it sits, we're looking at the same weight between both of these two knives. Final topic of discussion is going to be your variations. Okay. By the way, this does win in terms of price. $18 is still cheaper than $23 no matter what, so this does win the price category. Moving down to variations, again, I'm going to go ahead and count the 910, 911, 912, and all the variants of that in the category for this one, just like I'm going to count both the EL-06 line and EL-02 line for this one, because they are the same knife with a different locking mechanism. If this gets a hold of the frame lock versions, this should get the axis lock versions for this topic of discussion. So the 911 comes, or the 910 series comes with a black G10 satin blade, a green G10 satin blade, a stainless steel frame lock with a satin blade, and a black wash frame lock with a black wash blade. Those are all the versions I could find currently in production. The Enlan, you can get either in this desert digital camo with a tie-dye finish, a black G10 with a stone-washed finish, a black G10 with a damascened blade, meaning they take the 9CR18 MOV and they make it look like Damascus. It isn't Damascus, but they make it look like Damascus. You can get it in a black G10, black textured G10 with a stone-washed blade and an axis lock, a smooth G10 handled version with an axis lock and a satin blade, as well as a wood-handled version with a satin blade and an axis lock. So, overall, the Enlan does have a little bit more variety. So you have a few more options to choose from when looking at the Enlan as compared to the Sanrenmu. So you can decide which knife is better for you. If we're going on a strictly point-based system, then yes, the Sanrenmu wins in more areas than the others. However, that's not always how this works. Someone's not going to say, okay, well, this has overall more points on the sheet, so therefore it's the knife that I want to buy. That's obviously not how knife comparisons are going to play out for everybody. The entire point is to tell you which qualities they both have. Maybe you can see the designs and figure out which one you like for yourself. This is a very good knife. I do think, objectively speaking, the Land is a better knife, but that doesn't mean that you can't like the Enlan better. If maybe you love this SCK Loksha style design, as opposed to the Sapenza copy. Now, maybe this is more what you're looking for. And if that's the case, more power to you. It is a very good knife for the money. I do like this knife quite a lot. Or maybe you see all the pros that the Sanrenmu has by comparison and say, okay, that's clearly the overall better choice. That's the one that I want in my pocket for everyday carry use, and that's the one you buy. You can't go wrong with either option. At the end of the day, they're both still going to be good options for a very low price point. For me, I would take the Sanrenmu Land series of knives over the Enlan EL-06/EL-02 line of knives, but everyone has different preferences, so decide for yourself. Hopefully this video helped you to do that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and until next time, peace, and I'll see you later.